Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first Rich and Moses PUBG podcast. I'm joined firstly by the second best caster in the UK casting scene, Richard Sims, and of course, our very first guest, the inaugural, the always present, Keiron Scoom Prescott. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this podcast, specifically Sims, who did not have a choice, and Scoom, who I bullied into joining.
Hello.
So,
what's up?
I guess what we should do is, first of all, set the tone is that this is not supposed to be any formal kind of chat other than just going through some of the stuff we find interesting, specific to PUBG, sometimes not PUBG, and try and keep it to the point where we can have a discussion that does not put everyone to sleep. That is the only goal of this podcast. So, first of all, I guess we'll talk to Sims a little bit. Tell us, Sims, how are you?
Pretty good. I'm just pissing around with something called F-Lux because I'm getting headaches from my monitors. So no sponsorship required or anything there, but
Oh, right.
I'm just playing around with it. So cause I've got 3 monitors now, and I keep getting these banging headaches, and it's kind of pissing me off.
Eyes as sensitive as his skin, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it does feel like I am an albino throughout.
and,
Genuinely. It does.
And Scoom, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Good. So
Yeah.
off the back of a not as good of a week in GLL as the first week, the Reckoning, the current team, something that was debated, well, not debated, I guess, talked about hotly before it was announced. So tell us a little bit about yourself, since everyone kind of knows you, but this is kind of more for a wider audience. So tell us a little bit about your history, where you come from, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Keiron Prescott, obviously. I'm 26, about to be 27 in December. Scoom. To talk about it, I guess I can talk about my nickname. Scoom has been a nickname of mine since I was 8 years old. I made it up when I was in a holiday with my family and cousins and stuff. I just out of the blue made it up after watching Terminator in 3D, and it's been like my nickname since. Everyone calls me Scoom in real life, not even Keiron, except for my parents, obviously, it's my super close family.
Right.
Because they obviously made the name Keiron, they call me that, so they want to keep calling me Keiron, obviously. But my brother and all my close friends, everyone calls me Scoom. So that's been a nickname of mine for quite a while, but I've never really used it in gaming. I've been using different names in gaming. One of them was most popular was Hellboy. I called myself Hellboy before I even saw the movie Hellboy, I even knew that the comics existed. I just made up Hellboy as well, and that was one of my nicknames that I mainly used. But later in life, I just went back to Scoom. When I started streaming again, it just made the most sense to me for my brand and stuff like that, because obviously I couldn't use Hellboy and things like that, and Scoom just made the most sense. But yeah, about me, I mean, I've been playing games since 13 years old. I've been playing for over 13 years right now, and I've been competitive throughout every game that I've touched. The first game ever on PC was actually Call of Duty. That's what got me hooked, the first Call of Duty. And especially rifles, rifle only. I got insanely hooked at that. And I've just been, every single game you can mention, I've played at a competitive level, but never professionally. So I've always been at the top of Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Counter-Strike. I've always reached super high ranks, but never really anything to it. I've always been into esports as well, super into esports, and I always wanted to make it, but I never found the specific game that was oh, this is for me, I'm going to commit fully to it. So yeah, when I was 18, I got into poker, actually. I played professional poker from 18 to around 20 years old online, and was pretty successful at it, actually. But video gaming was more of a passion than poker, even though poker is kind of like a gaming, obviously. But I don't know, I was always distracted with gaming, playing WoW, playing League, playing Counter-Strike, that I didn't really put too much time in poker. I was this is not my true passion. So I went back into gaming, went into streaming 3 years ago, got partnered in Twitch. It was just playing for fun, and then PUBG came out, and here we are.
So now looking backwards, you talked a little bit about your choice as a nickname, and I guess since this is the first podcast, we should get everybody a pretty interesting origination of your nickname. Now, Richard, how did you come up with your username?
I dug really deep, and I thought about what would be an interesting name. I thought, what, I'm going to be a boring bastard and use my second name. So that's basically where it came from. However, from future, we do need to understand now, Keiron, that all events I'm going to call you Hellboy, because that is much more interesting than what Scoom is. No offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me personally, it is. I prefer Hellboy, but it's just like Hellboy is not. You can't brand it, right?
It's time for a
impossible.
rebrand, dude. It's time to rebrand.
No, I've already rebranded once because my old Twitch name was actually Pedro Sultana because I used to roleplay. I used to do a lot of RP, and my Twitch name initially was Pedro Sultana because I used to join like RP servers with lyric and stuff.
Okay.
And I started. Yeah. That's how I started streaming, like role playing. I was just a troll and having fun. Like I was doing like an Arnold impersonation, and that was my guy. I did a Mexican. The Pedro Sultana was like a Mexican character, and that's how I originated. And I started my streaming like that. And then I like after 2 years of streaming, I was like, damn it, why did I name myself this? I can't brand as an RP name. So I switched completely to Scoom, and everyone was like, what the fuck? You're Pedro, now you're Scoom. And like me trying to explain. Now, yeah, Hellboy was like my competitive nickname was Hellboy.
Got it. So you could say that. I think that Pedro Sultana is what you said.
Yeah, that was my Twitch name.
Fucking hell, there's no wonder you enjoy Miramar now. Actually, it all makes sense.
He gets to go back to his roots, just like, hold on, I have to go to Picado and live out my life as a store owner called Pedro.
Just in his mind, it's like Pedro intensifies and just goes off on his own.
So
Yeah.
So you're role playing, and what game are you playing when you're role playing?
I started role-playing in Arma 2. That's what Pedro came out, like Arma 2 roleplay. And I used to play on the servers Lyric used to play and stuff. And I just was a funny Mexican guy that loves chicas bonitas, which is beautiful ladies. I was that guy that was just trying to be a pimp and pick up ladies. That was my character. But when I started streaming, I was playing Reign of Kings. And I actually had a different character. It wasn't Pedro. It was Ralph. Ralph was the character that I made in Reign of Kings. And I was in Lyric server, Mr. Moon, Fairlight, all these like kind of popular streamers.
All right.
And I didn't stream back then. I was just playing for fun, and I was doing like an Arnold impersonation. I was just normal at first, and then I would just get angry and become Arnold, and everyone kind of liked it. And I started streaming, and from Reign of Kings, I went to Ark, Survival Evolved, another survival game, role-playing there. Then they came out with a Battle Royale game, actually, in Ark. I was really successful, like the most successful player there. I won the most prize money, the most tournaments. And it actually was a lot of prize money for how small the community was. And then PUBG came out, and I switched.
Any role playing?
That is an amazing backstory.
I was gonna say, I at this stage, I have to wonder now: is there ever an opportunity for us to hear these characters again? Could you do some Rolf for us right now, please?
Hello there. How you doing? My name is Ralph. Nice to meet you. That was what I used to do.
That is roughly as bad as I expected it to be.
It's a really bad Arnold impersonation. Like I took in my own route. Like, get to the chopper. That was like an initial like that's better impersonation, but like the way Ralph was like in between. I didn't want to do it too much Arnold.
Now
so
it makes
was
sense.
subtle.
With his sub alerts and
Yeah,
stuff.
let's get to the chopper. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, it's all kind of falling into place.
Multiple
now. All right,
multiple layers to this cake. So you've been competitive. I think we're all, me especially, I think have a competitive streak. I think that's kind of why we all wind up somewhere in the stratosphere of esports. But I think that with PUBG specifically, the whole competitive aspect was kind of lost in the beginning, where everyone was just grinding leaderboards. Do you think that as a player now that it's more engaging in the current format, where everything's focused essentially away from the base game, the ladder game, where you're always in customs, you're always doing scrims, face it, whatever? Do you kind of look backwards to like the good old days, or you think that you've come a lot further? PUBG is now in a state where that kind of stuff is no longer necessary.
A bit of both. I think looking back, the good old days, like season 1 to 3, was kind of fun to grind PUBG. I mean, mainly because it was a new game, obviously, and with new games you want to put in the hours, but also because it was kind of fun to play the leaderboards. I mainly played solos. I didn't play squads as most of the competitive players right now. They started with like squads as the main thing. But I used to play solo leaderboards. I used to stream it, and it was just really fun because you have something to strive for every day, and like it was actually pretty competitive too. Like season 1 to 3 was actually good games. You would face like the majority of top players most of the time. So that was really fun. But in terms of like the way it was competitively back then to now, like now is a lot better. Like there's a lot more structure. There's obviously a lot of changes in terms of settings and stuff like that. And it's way better for observing. And like you said, we have a lot of organizations now. We have scrims going. So it's definitely in a much better place than it was back then. But like the actual core game, like the core pubs, back then was way better. But now we do have Face It coming up, which is going to make it good again.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it
think
already has kind of.
yeah, I think Face. It's I think the best thing we've seen so far because it has kind of felt like, and maybe Sims can give some elaboration on this, that from the beginning till now, I think that we kind of expected that there to be more new blood coming into competitive PUBG. We've seen a couple of decent examples for individual players, but not a lot of new teams, and I think that Face It will help with that. So, Richard, I guess. What do you think
Yeah.
about like? Do you remember what it was like? I mean, looking back to Oakland, even to now, like we haven't really seen any new blood coming into the scene.
Not necessarily, no. I kind of have to agree with that. And I think at the same time, you also had Fortnite on the come up, and we saw a few players just kind of distance themselves, go off and do their own thing with that one. That took a large portion of probably even the casual base, to be honest with you, that were playing because they wanted something even more casual. So they move on to an even easier game, which just give them, we did lose a lot of people to that. Obviously now Blackout's coming out and a few people looking towards that. But I think, I think it's the right time. Obviously now you've got Face It going to come in there, which will provide, rather than, at the very start of it, organizations were picking up people based on what they do, what they've seen them do, what's their personalities like, and then they were looking, the only place they could really go was the leaderboards. Let's take a look at who's got the highest dealer. Let's take a look at who's been grinding and who seems to be playing well.
First come,
Face It will
first
give you
serve,
that.
almost.
Yeah, it really was. We all know there are players out there now that had big organizations and got dropped because they just didn't live up to the standard of they wanted somebody else. It's as simple as that, and they were picked up basis on how they were performing on stream. I think the ranking system will, for me at least, as I play Face It literally because I like to hear what the players are saying. How I think it makes us better casters. That's literally the only reason that I'm playing it, to try and be better from a caster's POV, see it from a player's point of view, see what the players are saying, the communication, how they act. I mean, it's a totally different ball game when you jump it. Even I've played in scrims twice, and it's a totally different fucking game compared to. I mean, we all know that anyway. But I think the ranking system for someone like me and others that just want to grind, and just play for it for a rank, for something that's physical in front of them that they can see. I think the ranking system alongside Face It's going to be really well, because you've got best of both worlds, and you got the people I don't want to sweat their asses off and play Face It, because they are really hard games.
Yep, that's true.
And if you go down, you've got to wait till your teammates are all out and finish. You can't just go again. So you have to. It's made specifically for people who want to play competition. So it is good, and the response it's getting is fantastic. But then you side that lines with the rankings that are hopefully coming out. I think one of the devs said in my chat last night it's somewhere in October,
early October. I would expect it to see next Tuesday. Would be my guess.
Well, there you go then. I mean, if we get that, I think we've got the best of both worlds. We can kind of claw back a lot of people, either that we've lost or have just got a bit bored.
Right. Just looking at, so you're referencing the ranking system that's been announced and that's coming out with patch number 22. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But for those of you out of the loop, which would be strange because you're watching a PUBG podcast, but regardless, the ranking system coming out, I think this received a bit of mixed reviews because it's not really you're just adding a picture to a ranking range, which is a little bit, I think, what a lot of the guys, at least at the pro level and in general, if you just look at it, it's not really a matchmaking system. It's just this is what you are now, and a revamp of the score screen. I think there's a big bonus there because a lot of regular players, which I think don't really look to the competitive side of things too often, just want to know what kind of player am I, and the simple gold, diamond, platinum, whatever, is something that they can use to shit on each other constantly, which I think is something that's always missing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree completely with you. For the pro levels, like for us, it's like, yeah, you're just adding a tag. There's no matchmaking. It's still going to be the same. We're still, obviously, for us, it's just Face It. PUBG is going to be against randoms. But like for a casual perspective, like you just said, like it makes a lot of sense. Like when you have like 1,800 ELO or 2,000 ELO, like they don't really, like you can't compare. It's just numbers. But if you give them bronze, you give them silver, diamond, stuff like that, then it's like they can relate against each other, like at least in the casual level, even though it's technically the same. It's just a number. They just put a tag on top of it, like a picture.
We, I think, saw the best Liquid we ever saw at PGI. And now there was a very small hiccup, which is OMG played the best PUBG I think they've ever played in their entire lives. But we saw Liquid essentially come in and really show that they were right with WTSG as one of the, if not the best team in Europe, the best in the West, I would say. And now, months later, you're off the team. So I wanted to know, and this is something that we've all been kind of wondering, is what kind of precipitated this change, and what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I think after PGI, in my eyes, I think we were the best team in the world. Just after that, even ahead of FaZe, I would say. But yeah, I mean, the change happened. It wasn't I mean, for everyone, it was a shock because obviously we've been doing so well, and like one of the if you're a top 3 team in the world, like why are you making roster changes, right? But like we never really talked about it. Maybe I don't know about the other guys what they've said on stream and stuff because I haven't been following. And no, I think they haven't been saying anything either because technically there isn't anything to say. I mean, a lot of people want to hear like stuff or drama and stuff like that, but like the reality is I think it just didn't gel in too well like between them 3 and myself in terms of how the game played. I mean, in the sense of I was a shot caller when I was in the old Liquid roster, and I've always been like pretty vocal. And when I made this roster together, I didn't know exactly what the roles were. I know, from watching Ibiza and Kingwin, I know he had like a little bit of shot calling role. James wasn't really a shot caller per se. I think it was mainly Simsy when he was a Penta. He just gave the ideas, and Samty wanted to start shot calling as well. So when I made this roster, I just got them individual skill, and I don't really think how it's going to work out. I just thought they were probably the best players in my eyes in terms of mechanically. And I got along really well with Samty. So I just made this team, and straight off the bat, we were all like really vocal. Like we were all shot callers, like we were all really shot calling. So when I saw that, I took a step back like instantly. I mean, we didn't really discuss it like myself per se. Like I didn't say like I want to shot call anything. I just like took a step back, let them handle it. I'll just be like a support player. I think that just made most sense in the way that the team can compromise together. So I just started playing a more supportive role, and that kind of made me a worse player per se. Maybe not for the team, but for myself individually. I think I was not the same Scoom that I was in the old Liquid roster. If you look at the old Liquid roster in all the leagues, it was like PUBG Online and Awesome, for example. You can go back. The leading fraggers was Gemty, Shiv, and myself from all the tournaments you would see. And like it was us 3 always top fragging. So I was going from like used to top fragging, playing really fucking well, to now I'm playing a supportive role, which is fine. Like for me, it's not an issue at all. Like kills don't matter as long as the team wins. But for me personally, like that like affected my gameplay in terms of like I was playing more supportive role. I wasn't getting that many kills. I kind of lost a little bit self-confidence because of it. Even though I was sometimes doing my role, I played pretty well, especially at LANs. I think I performed really well at LANs, but online I didn't really perform well and lost a little bit of self-confidence. And just something that I was missing is that shot calling aspect of it, and that's how it kind of ended up being. Like they were just more on the same page in terms of that, and like I was like still missing something, and I didn't play that well. I mean, I think Starladder was probably my best performance season 2. I think personally, I don't think anyone can carry the team, but I feel like that was if you look at a tournament, that's a tournament that I could say that Scoom performed the best out of the roster. After PGI, I already kind of felt like, even though I love them, I love the boys. Like they are good friends of mine. I think they're fantastic players. I think even me being in the team will be a #1 team in the world without a doubt. I think I still brought a lot of things into the team, and I think they probably know that as well. But they kind of felt like there was a disconnect between me and them in that sense, in terms of actual gameplay, and it just got brought up, and I completely like it was mutual for me. It was mutual decision. I think this was the best decision for myself, and I think it's best decision for them as well. Now I'm back in like a more shot calling role, and I feel way more comfortable than I was before. So this change, even though Team Liquid is an amazing organization, and it really hurts me to leave them because I'm really good friends with the manager and the owners. It's amazing. But for me, I think this is the best change. I think I'm going to be the best Scoom version coming forward. And I think this roster can be even bit better than the old Liquid, and no disrespect to the other guys.
Well, I guess, and I think this is something that Richard and I talked about in the past, is that we all kind of wondered, like it did seem that after winning your last LAN together, that maybe was there ever a chance, was there ever a discussion, or I mean, like it kind of sounds like there was a discussion between yourself and the remaining 3 on Liquid. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it was still considered of me staying, especially after how I performed after PGI. I did okay at GLL and Hong Kong. I think Hong Kong was a joke because it was TPP and stuff. I don't consider that competitive.
Don't tell that to Moody. Don't tell that to Moody. That's his. It's the only thing he's got.
That's another. I dislike when the general community, specifically maybe some like experts, see one tournament's results and suddenly jump on the jump wagon saying, "Oh, these one of the best teams in the world."
Yeah.
I think in PUBG you cannot say that. I think on any day, given tournament, any team can kind of win, like on a decent level. Like, and if you grab like the top 20 or top 30 teams in EU and NA, you can say like any of those teams over the course of 12 months, if you have one tournament each month over 12 tournaments, any of those teams can win one tournament. But how many of those teams are gonna be in the top 5 over the whole year? Not that many. The consistency is key in PUBG. That's what for me is what you see a good team. And that's why FaZe and Liquid are the two only teams kind of that have been consistent. They've placed at all lands top 5. Then you have other teams like Avanga that win Katowice that looked really good. People are saying, "Oh, they're one of the best teams. We told you CIS," but then they flop everywhere else. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think Avanga was a great team. I think they were a decent team. They were maybe a top 20 team, which is still really good. But I don't think they were like a lot of people put them as number 1 and number top 3. Like, you have to look at consistency. Like, for example, Reckoning now, like we started doing pretty well. But you can't look at 1 week or 2 weeks how we're doing. Like, we're gonna struggle for a couple of months probably. Like, it's gonna happen. But like after 3 to 6 months, then you can say, are Reckoning good in terms of results, or did we just look at one selective group? You know, like that's one thing that I kind of like see it a lot. Like today or yesterday, Cammy posted, "Oh, this Ghost roster, if they go like this team roster, like I have no disrespect to Ghost. I think McCoy and Balak are fucking good players. I'm good friends with them." But you can't say just after 1 week or 2 that this Ghost roster is amazing. Like they're going to win the next tournament. You know what I mean? And then they flopped at Curse yesterday. And I mean, it's just one tournament of Curse as well. Like we have to see a lot of tournaments and see how teams actually do before we can consider them a top team.
I'm surprised to hear that the motivation to try your absolute best came only after learning that you were going to be off Liquid's roster. Do you think that was maybe indicative of a little bit of complacency on your end?
I just had a period where, like you said, complacency, maybe not. It was a mixture of a lot of things in the past, like the early 2018 till like PGI. It was just more, I wasn't enjoying PUBG publics. Like that was one of the reasons. I wasn't enjoying playing PUBG. So when you play professionally for a game and you're not enjoying it, that does hurt. I love playing scrims. I love playing competitive games. Like you give me that all day and I'll play all day. Like I love that. I could scrim all day and not stream or anything like that. I stopped streaming to focus on competitive. I wanted to practice a lot and stuff like that. And obviously scrims only happen in the evening. So
stream face it.
Yeah, I mean nowadays, yes, but back then there was nothing. It was just publics, right? And publics was just really boring. I got to a point I was really starting to hate the game. And then a few patches came in where kind of was destroying, like the FPS went down again. There was a lot of bugs, like, you know, the free seeder, you would fly off. There was just a lot of issues with the game that all of it mixed together. I just was not enjoying it. I actually found my motivation after PGI. Like during PGI.
Yeah.
When I was at PGI.
World stage. Once you walk into that place, you're like, oh my God,
that's what blew my mind. That was like went into the arena. I was playing in front of like thousands of people and LAN. I was like, I love doing this. Doing PGI, I was like, I really love doing this. And like it gave me motivation to go back at home and start playing again. Like at that moment, I was like, after PGI, I was like, I'm gonna hit the SAG. I'm gonna start grinding like crazy. I'm gonna play. I'm motivated again. I was really feeling good mentally, and then that's when the team and stuff was like, you know, we kind of want to have a roster change, and it was kind of like a bummer in a sense. Like
you had just got this motivation.
I'm hungry again. You know, I'm hungry again, and even though I did think about, I actually thought about quitting myself.
I
actually thought about quitting the team. No, the team, because I felt like I didn't play the best Scoom. Even though I think I did okay in terms of like the overall level, I thought I wasn't the level of Scoom that the team should be having. And if the team doesn't, if I'm being like that, I'm being selfish and being in the team. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I always think for the team first. Like I think what's the best for the team. And if I think I'm not being the best player, and I think they can possibly get someone else that's more motivated and might be playing better than me, at their peak, then get them. And I thought that when we didn't qualify for PGI, like I really like my teammates never knew, but I wanted to quit back then and just like leave Liquid. I don't know what would have happened, what would have said back then, but then we got the call that the team cheated and we qualified for PGI. I was like, okay, this is my last chance. Right. You know, my last chance to get motivation, my last chance to prove myself. and we did really well at PGI. But I think it just, even though it's kind of sad that it's ended like that, I think it's, for me, I think it's the best choice still. Like, I think me being an in-game leader moving forward, and it's going to be better. Even though I would love to play with Liquid boys again, like I would stay, but I think if I had to choose, I would still leave.
This is kind of a question I had in the back of my mind. I mean, coming off of Liquid, let's say that's a given. You're leaving the team, but looking backwards, Mista, his playing career kind of it didn't really have an end. I think that he just saw a good opportunity to get on with Liquid in a capacity that wasn't that was maybe not what he exactly wanted for himself, but he's been playing in these games now and actually having a decent showing at that. Everyone on that roster seems to be denying the fact that he could be their fourth player. So if it's not Mista, Scoom, who would you have chosen, contracts and relationships aside, to replace you on that team?
This is theoretically speaking, obviously.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking.
No leaks.
Yeah. I mean, no leaks.
Or leaks. I mean, leak away, please.
I think just kind of before you do step into this, there's a lot of people that I think we all kind of generally know who should be and who is going to be, and it kind of makes sense. But obviously, we respect that there are contracts and things in place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say Scoom. That's me being myself. But obviously, if I can't choose myself or be in that team, I think what can be the best player for that team would have to be. I think for me, you're asking me who do I think the best player in the game is, and it's not in Liquid. It's Jempty. Like Jempty for me is the best player in the world. And if I had to choose theoretically who would I put in Liquid, it would be Jempty. But I know Jempty and Samty are brothers. I know they've played in the past together, and I don't think they mesh too well. So in that sense, if I'm looking at it from the back perspective, like maybe they won't mesh too well. I mean, Jempty is a shot caller in FaZe, and he's a really vocal shot caller as well. And Samty and James are really vocal shot callers, and EB is sometimes shot calls too. So I don't know in terms of like forming them together how that would look theoretically. It might not be the best for them. It might be someone who's not mechanically really good, but not so vocal or clashes because there's a brother in there, you know? For me, as a player, obviously Jempty makes the most sense. But as a team overall, I don't know if he would be the best fit.
In the beginning, we had everyone grinding, and it was kind of a first-come, first-served basis, and that's kind of made the base of all the players that are still kind of around. So in Fortnite, I think one of the more interesting stories I've been hearing a little bit recently were players like Myth, where they were good at the beginning on stream and were grinding and hitting all these crazy shots and playing whatever. But then when the tournament started to come around, it was shown that, no, not the best player, just an entertaining guy. We've seen a little bit of that in PUBG as well. I think the most obvious one would be TSM at this stage, and a little bit in other teams as well. Now, that's no disrespect to TSM. Those guys all take the game as seriously as anybody else, but also have to balance that streaming kind of pressure. Do you think now that PUBG competitive is not very suited, because we don't really see, aside from a very select few, any pro players gaining any real momentum or even putting any effort in beyond just scrims or competition?
To touch on that, I mean, I agree completely what you said. I mean, I think TSM were really competitive in the beginning of the thing. So like, even though they were mainly streaming and they still did some scrims here and there, but they were still like a top 5 EU. I mean, they did get top 5 at Oakland. They were not considered like, oh, they're just streamers are gonna get shit on. Like, I think they did really well with the like what people thought they did. In my opinion, I think they did really well. Just over the time, over the 1 year, you know, if you don't put in the hours, most of the people are, and you're just basically just streamers, it's going to be much tougher on you. And a lot of new blood came in. Well, not new blood per se, but like the mentality of people came in of like really improving, and it's going to go esports. I think that would like step a bit back for most time, but I think if they really committed, they could have done it. I don't know too much about Myth, but I heard as well the same. Like he hasn't been doing too well in tournaments, and I mean, it's not a surprise. We've seen it in PUBG. I'm not surprised it's happening in Fortnite. And to go to your question, what was the last question you asked about? Like,
do you think that the lack of, or what do you think the reason is that we don't see any of these players? I say I looked at like Ibiza, James, most of Liquid, let's say, and then some of FaZe to an extent. I think Fuzzface is a good example there. But I don't know about like Richard. Who is the most popular NA pro player influencer?
For PUBG, this.
Yeah,
but he's
not pro
European.
anymore.
Yeah,
you know, he plays in European time.
Yeah, well,
But we're talking about like current pro players in the current circuit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd probably from a branding stance, you'd have to go with someone like Hypoc for simply because of the Optic brand, right? But it doesn't stream. I don't catch his stream that much. I mean, I'd like to think that brand would be pushing PUBG esports chronically and really heavily, to be honest with you.
I'm not sure who it was I had the discussion with, at least specific to Optic, but I think that Optic is kind of, and I guess really, if you look at a bunch of the North American brands, it's like PUBG is a little bit of a vacation for them, where they just have a team off somewhere, and they don't really put a lot of time into it. But I think that, and this is a massive criticism that kind of stems from the point I just made, is that who's the most popular North American PUBG Pro influencer, streamer, YouTuber, whoever. The real answer is that I don't think there is one, because I mean they don't really put in the effort to stream. So if I'm a North American organization, Cloud9 or Evil Geniuses, pick one, I'm wondering, well, what is my investment worth in PUBG if I'm not getting anything back from the players? And I think there's a little bit of that in Europe as well. But at least in Europe, the teams are winning the tournament. So I guess at that stage, you're getting the exposure that way. But really, if I'm a North American organization, what am I getting out of my players?
And it's normally something like in terms of that, like in other esports, like for example, League of Legends specifically, NA is most known for being the content people, like the drama or the streamers and stuff like that. NA is mostly known for that in the competitive side. For example, League of Legends, like when it's most streamers in League of Legends a stream, like the NA players get way more viewers than the EU players. And the EU players are the ones that are doing better normally. That's like the normal consensus, whatever that word is. But like you don't see that in PUBG. It's like the other way around. And it's EU, well, not the other way around, but like EU is the ones that have the streamers. But it's mainly only like Liquid. It's only Ibiza, Jeems, and kind of Samty and Fuzzface. Those are the 4 guys that are like leading the charge in terms of like pro players streaming. Whilst everyone else is, either they might be streaming, but it's just not getting that viewership that they should be. And in NA, I just don't see that many, 1, streaming, or 2, getting the viewership, which they're known for. Like NA love content. Like they love that. They love drama and like video content, whatever, vlogs and stuff like that. They just, at least in my experience from other esports. And it's rare to see right now. It's really weird to see.
Richard?
It just doesn't feel like it's there. I can see some of the guys are starting to work it, You got to give credit to Mikoy, for example. Every single day I get up and he's putting about the Mick gang. He's been streaming. He's been grinding.
Mikoy is the only person.
That's what you need to do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the very few, I would say, that in the North American region seems to care at all about his presence. His brand, his social media. He's doing things that are some would consider cringy. But to me, I've met Mikoy a bunch of times. A great personality, and I think that's kind of going back. Again, one more step is that it's the personalities that I think are missing. Because you talked about League of Legends. Double Lift, a North American player, is the preeminent personality. He trash talks nonstop. And that's something that I think has, aside from a few choice casters getting themselves into trouble now and again, the trash talking just doesn't seem to materialize. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think McCoy is probably the guy from NA that's has like the biggest personality. I don't think he does stream, but I don't think it's like he's like on Twitter or posting and stuff like that. He's like that's his main thing. Kind of like to what I am recently. Like I haven't streamed that much recently. I'm more of like a vocal guy on Twitter. Doing these podcasts. I'm always like on board on branding, but I haven't been doing too much streaming, which I want to start doing again now. But it's something I think in general that a lot of people in PUBG are lacking, and I think it just helps you. Like a lot of people are maybe shy doing it. Maybe they just avoid it because they don't want to do it. But I think it just helps. It helps the whole scene. It helps yourself. It helps the person that's interviewing you. It helps PUBG, the competitive side, to bring out these personalities. It kind of pains me to see at GLL when Mustache Dave was going around interviewing people, and you see people just avoiding it, like completely avoiding it. Like if you might be eating, you don't want to be interviewed when you're eating. That's fine. You just walk away. But like constantly people walking away from interviews, one, I feel like it should be your obligation to do all these stuff. I think from tournament organizer's perspective, yeah, they do the interviews and the photos, but I think even the interviews throughout the game should be that. But like, it just helps you. Like, why don't you want to do this branding? You're not going to be a professional player for like in the next 5 years. You might not be on the next 10. If you do this networking, if you do this branding of yourself, like it's going to help you if you want to fall back to streaming. You're going to have more of a platform, more of a like community following you because you've been showing your personality. Whether it's good or not, it's, but at least you showcase yourself. And I think that's what's lacking in PUBG. A lot of people just avoid it completely.
I think you increase your equity with the brand that you have currently.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Cloud9 and I'm looking through my roster, and I mean, albeit rotating roster, it's one of those things where you have to decide, who am I going to keep? And I think that Moody, out of all of them, has done a good enough job of putting himself out there. But I don't think we get to see the real. I would love to see a person like Moody be his real self all the time, which is a guy who isn't afraid to get into it a little bit with other players. And I think that the whole network of kind of friendship or just the secret handshake, I guess you will, around content. And this is a personal pain point for myself and maybe even Richard as well, looking to make something as simple as getting replays from pro players. Now, this is something that I've talked about with you and others, and I understand that the reason that these things don't want to be made available is due to the protection of in-game strategy. Now, at what point do you think you have to make a sacrifice, Richard, as a pro player, to say, like, listen, yeah, maybe some stuff might get out about us from a strategy standpoint, but look at the exposure we might get if more people get to see more content related to competitive PUBG?
Regardless of these strats or not, as soon as you go to an event, everyone fucking sees them anyway. Everyone, the eyes of the world are upon you, and you can see where people generally like to loot these days. We know where people like to go.
Rotations.
You're gonna have. You're going to have rotation. You have a big list. You'll say, okay, well, we know this team likes to rotate around here. Generally, if it's a circle up here, there's been enough tournaments, even without the scrims, to go back, write all down on a piece of paper, which some of us have done, and understand, generally speaking, good percentage of where teams are going to be going. So it's all going to be out there. I think content needs to happen. Content definitely. We don't want to be at a point where let's just talk theoretically here. Let's say Blackout blows up, a load of players switch to it. Doc, Shroud, Andy Pyro, Break. Let's say, just take those four, for example. Let's say if they all went to Blackout, where would the numbers be through North America and Europe,
exactly.
for PUBG streaming? That's it. I mean, you've got Shroud who's pulling 30K, Doc who's pulling 20, you got Andy who pulls a good 3 to 4, and then Break who's doing the same.
They're all looking forward to Blackout too, every single one of them.
It's what I mean. We don't want to be at that point where we're literally relying on influencers and streamers and popular people to hold up the numbers thing. I think even just from a branding side of it, picking up brands, sponsorship, being someone individual, giving interviews, doing content, being different and not a boring bastard. It all comes under the same thing. And I think that all comes part and part of being a player. You're on a world stage. You need to be able to handle that level of pressure of the entirety, of all these people watching you play. You should be able to handle the pressure of being on Twitter or taking photos or doing interviews and stuff like that. And I get it. It's hard. I've tried doing YouTube. It's shit. It's such a graft and it's such a grind. I'm sure Moses, you can explain more on that. I just packed it in because I just didn't have the fucking time. I just thought, no. Streaming, I try and commit to 2 days a week just for my own personal brand, to be out there, to be part of the scene, part of the community, and seeing that I'm actively playing the game and such, even though I do in the background and I've got how many hours on my account. People can go and to see it. But yeah, I think supporting it, tweeting about it, getting involved with stuff, it all should come part and part of the contract, to be honest with you.
Other than that, I guess since we touched on it briefly, Scoom, give me your North American super team. No contracts, everyone's available.
Like from the outside perspective, obviously I don't know the guys, but it would be Keiron Venerated, Zampa. I spoke to you about it at PGI, I think, and the fourth player. The thing is, you cannot. That's the thing about teams. You can't have too much fragging power. With those three alone, you have insane fragging power already. Like with those three, but I don't know any leaders in NA. That's the issue. Like there's no clear like really good leaders.
There's no Scoom
in NA.
There's no Scoom in NA.
I don't know about that, but
I mean there is. I mean, if like I think the closest we've gotten in the past is Hypoc, but I mean we never hear from Hypoc other than some some here and there.
You had other players, but I'm not gonna mention. But like, there's no.
Who you're not gonna mention?
Yeah,
who you're not gonna mention?
No, I'm not gonna mention. But like Venerated and Keiron, I think they shot call themselves, right?
Yeah,
I think you just need someone.
NGL,
yeah, so like he already brings that. You just, I guess, you need someone that's more maturity to bring into that, because they're all young. Like Zempa's really young as well. Like all those three are young. I think someone mature that can level head themselves. I'm describing myself, but like someone like that in NA. But
why isn't Scoom in NA then?
Because I wanted
He's
make a
barely
team
in the
with these guys.
UK. Just calm down, mate. Come on.
Well, I mean, we saw the NIP roster be vacated due to like essentially zero performance over their entire history, right? I mean,
-2.
Yeah, so I mean, they just got vacated entirely, and I think NA's got a couple of those teams. I mean, I love the guys, but I mean, Evil Geniuses is the one that comes to mind for me that is just holding on to this powerhouse North American org with not a lot of output, right? So I'm wondering, at what point looking to the Pro League do these rosters start becoming vacated for teams from Europe? I mean, we can't really. We can do what, 2 is the maximum now, right? Or we can have from any one team, or just one. Yeah, one. So why isn't Scoom going to North America to make a super team from the guys there? Because if you just name 3 players that are all under contract, you're not. So if you can find +1 and go to Envy, why don't you do that?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they're playing with pad caps in GLL, and I actually don't have experience with pad caps, but all I've been hearing is an insane player.
Yeah.
So I would have mentioned him as well. It's just I don't have
so
experience
much
with
firepower,
him.
but they need that leader, that front facing person, because I think we've talked about this. NA just doesn't have those personalities. We don't have someone be like, this is the guy we need to lead the we need a North American super team, and this is the person we need who has the experience with a super team. There's only one person I can think of, and it's you. So what is preventing you from looking at those teams and saying, like, let me come to Envy, let's have a chat, and we'll get this thing going? Because they need one. You're off contract. What's the barrier?
Just trying to build a North American team because of your North American blood, aren't you? Here, this is what I can see what you're doing.
Well, I mean, if I'm Scoom, I like paychecks. Envy's got money. You know what I'm saying?
For me, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it definitely was in my mind. No, like I have a lot of options in my mind, and like to go anywhere, and NA was still appealing, and obviously like Keiron and Venerated that are really appealing to me. Like if I would have to go to NA, or if I would get asked to NA and stuff like that, which I'm not gonna mention, but I have, like they would be a team that would definitely be interesting. But at the same time, even though I might be super interested in that, I am super interested in The Reckoning. I'm super interested in Rafi and Shiv and Haxete. Like, I think, even though Kate and Venerated are great players, I think for me, I'm more committed, and I think will have more success with these guys. It's hard to say. I think a good supportive player would fit Liquid more than Gemty, even though Gemty is an amazing player. Unless Gemty like completely shuts up and doesn't do vocal and just focus in on like being for the team and being on that role, then yeah, like I was more of a shot caller and I became more supportive. But yeah, it's hard to say, but I think I would say Gemty, just speaking.
So there's been a couple of, and this is something Richard and I talked about in the past, is that it kind of seems, and even talking to you now, that you would choose yourself to go back to that roster. Would it be correct to assume that there's a little bit of regret, guilt, or maybe even anger looking back and coming off that roster? Do you think that what happened was motivation? Was it kind of a shot to the gut, a ego check? Like, how, from a mental standpoint, did you, now transitioning off of Liquid, how has that affected you?
Like, yeah, I said, like, I would put myself back in Liquid, I think, because I got into a spot when obviously I was after PGI that we decided to depart, but I still had a few tournaments in like to play, and that gave me a huge motivation to play like much better myself and prove myself to myself and my teammates and the organization. Like missing me is going to be a big part. Like, and we went out on a bang on Starladder. I think that was the most competitive tournament to date, in my opinion, in terms of competition. Like, and I performed. Like, I normally I don't like saying stuff like that. I don't like saying I performed fantastic and like a huge ego and stuff like that. It's not me. I don't perform well in other tournaments, but at Starladder I fucking performed really well. I was one of the top fraggers in Liquid, which normally doesn't happen as a support. I clutched a lot of second games. I clutched a win. I played really well, and I think I was, in my eyes, even though it's a team game, and I always think it is team game, I feel like I was probably one of the best players in that tournament in the finals and the MVP for Liquid. But, and I proved myself, and I knew that I'm capable of that. And I think that's Scoom of Starladder with that Liquid roster, and I think they might think that too. Maybe they thought that in the previous lands I didn't perform that well, but in this Starladder, it's like Scoom fucking showed up. I think they thought that too. So yeah, I mean, for me mentally, even though I love the guys and I would definitely play with them, I think it's just best if we part ways. And I think they agree too. Even though they might want me, I think it just makes most sense. I think I'm meant to be a shot caller. I think I'm meant to be an in-game leader, coming up with strats and stuff like that, because I think I have more momentum when I do my own thing than listening to others.
I think you were just talking about the roster changes, and in your particular case, like the motivation factor. I think now looking at other teams, we talked about FaZe and WTSG, probably the other two most prominent rosters who are undergoing changes in their roster right now. A lot of the things that I've heard, and again, this might not all be true, but that it seems that these roster changes are happening due to that motivation, that ability to grind. You just talked about how Ibiza, James Samty. The one thing I noticed the most about them is that they are always present, researching. They're watching NAGLL when they're done. They played Curse Trials. They play GLL, and then they're watching NAGLL, the NA Curse Trials. They're always watching and always grinding. I think Ibiza
live and breathe it, don't
yeah, they just everything all the time. So looking at a player like Haxetti, and even I think maybe one of the understated and surprising ones was Larson. We haven't talked to Larson, so I don't want you to speak on his behalf. But do you think that in some of these other cases that these rosters are looking at underperforming players or making changes based on that grind, that constant professionalism required now to always be doing more?
Like it comes down a lot to it. It could be just grind and stuff, but it could also mean it just doesn't gel too well, and maybe that gel reacts negatively to you, and you don't want to grind because you're not enjoying playing with your teammates.
Right?
Maybe some teams have that, and it's like, I'm not really enjoying playing with these guys, and so I'm not putting in the hours. But if I'm playing with, like, if you have fun, like, it's easy to put in hours. So it could be partly because that, but I have no idea why teams are doing roster changes. But I think it's something in PUBG that I want to talk about as well. I haven't tweeted out, but I've been meaning to. Is like, you're seeing all of these roster changes, and a lot of people are like, I like doing these roster changes. They make sense. It's in other esports, and other people are like saying that this is not good for the scene. This is not good for esports. Why are teams changing so much? It just doesn't make sense. And my point of view is, like, PUBG is super early esports, right? It's only been 1 year since it's been out.
Right.
So you have 1 point. Since it's only been out for 1 year, roster changes are going to happen because, like we spoke earlier in this podcast, some players have been grandfathered in. Like myself, for example, I've been playing PUBG since the very beginning. A lot of other players have been in the competitive scene since the very beginning. So they have that name. They have, that, like, they've just been playing since the beginning. So it's easier for all of us to be in the scene. Like, if I'm out of Liquid, I can get in another team. And if I'm out, I'm in the community. I'm in the scrims. I'm everywhere. So it's easy for that. But a lot of these teams, as from the beginning, are maybe not the best players, but they're just best players because they have the game knowledge, they have the hours.
They were there
after
the
1 year, after the 1 year, or the following years are coming, obviously the new blood that's coming in, the younger generation, or the people that are starting to get those 1,000, 2,000 hours are coming up. They're going to be individually maybe better than those people. That's one of the reasons, the hours. The other reason is, friendship. I think a lot of people that got into competitive PUBG started playing competitively with friends. Right? They got together to become friends. Oh, you want to play? Maybe they're not the best team together. Individually, there's a lot of disparity in terms of skill level. When one player in that team's like really good and the other guys are dragging him down. But since they're friends, they're like playing in a roster together. They sometimes qualify tournaments, so they stick together. But then eventually you see these teams having roster changes just because it's 1 year, it's becoming more competitive. And obviously you have to drop your friends. Like, it just happens. Sometimes some teams are taking longer to drop players, some are not, and it's just, that's another process. It's just, that's something that's lacking. As soon as you give issue to your teammates, as soon as there's problems, they turn on you and you're out. You know what I mean? There's no infrastructure or someone ahead of you that's like, if it's not working out, work on your problems, like, and stuff like that. There's no infrastructure to say. So you see a lot of roster changes because of that as well. There's like, those 3 points are the major issues right now. And I think the third one is probably the highest, just because if there's any issues, if you're doing bad, you blame each other, and it's like, you're not really focusing on the core issue, and you're just like blaming someone else. Oh, it's Scoom's problem. Just to say name myself, it's Scoom's problem. Let's get someone else. It's gonna be better. That's the mentality a lot of players have without really fixing the problem. Why are you having the issue in the first place? I mean, obviously everyone has to give him the same effort. Like, if Scoom is not putting his effort, then it makes sense. But I think a lot of roster changes happen because of that.
I think we see that in North America, and that's something I wanted to touch on briefly. And I'll put this to Sims first. What do you and this is in the context of that the North American PUBG player base is at the smallest it's ever been. So we've seen that affect not only the North American audience from a streaming and other content standpoint because of competitors entering the market, but Richard, what do you think is wrong with North American PUBG right now?
I think there's an outstanding amount of skill in North America. It's there. But again, if you're not practicing against Liquid, if you're not practicing against FaZe, you will get to a certain point where you can only play against, your ballpark only becomes so high, is what I'm trying to say. And you can only play against those other people in their own infrastructure. To kind of go off what the back of Scoom was saying with the teams and such, I think everyone now realizes for two reasons things have got to change, and that's why you're seeing a lot of change. One, everyone knows pro leagues are coming up, so teams are like, okay, we got to sort of shit out. We got to get this fixed, sort of shit out. Two, PUBG is in its infancy in terms of esports. This is the first major shift of what will, I believe, will be many. You'll get one or two every single year. A spot becomes apparent on Liquid. I'm sorry, but it just affects every motherfucker below it. It's a knock-on domino effect, because Liquid, let's be real, are only going to pick up a world-class player to fill your boots, Keiron, at the end of the day, and that's going to leave gaps open everywhere. But it's the first one. It's the first major shift, and it's going to be a landslide where you'll see all these teams changing up and becoming different rosters. It gets messy, but overall,
well, you said you just said that there's lots of talent in the North American scene, but it seems like they're spread across so many teams that their collective firepower just isn't quite enough unless they get that one-off victory. I think the best example was looking at Sharpshot joining Tempo Storm, and they win that tournament. And now the question is, Sharpshot, based on his performance there, is quickly being and should be considered one of the better teams in North America. Sorry, one of the better players in North America. But Scoom, before I let you answer, you just mentioned like the friendships aspect, and I think that's much more entrenched in North America, where this intricate network of who likes who doesn't like who, and with all that skill on the table, I think that's the biggest barrier for these guys actually aside from contracts, mind you, just kind of bearing whatever hatches there might be, having some maturity, some professionalism, and coming together to make those equivalent super teams in North America that we've all been talking about. Caden, Venerated, Sharpshot, Pat Caps, Zampa. Like, there's so many names that you can talk about that are good, but they just don't have the ability or the desire to play with each other. And I think even looking at C9's new roster, the question there is that you can see that Profi, Moody, these guys are friends, Nerf friends as well. And I mean, that roster now is on paper decent, but they don't really have an infrastructure where there's like, who's the captain of C9? Who's the leader? Who's the one making those calls? So in your opinion, Scoom, what is North America lacking? What do they need to change? And how do they get more competitive in compared to Europe?
To be honest, one of the things that looking at EU and looking at NA and why EU may be more competitive is EU had a phase. EU had a G core.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they had a team that was dominating leagues constantly over and over again, coming first place. They didn't have a scene where it was like, maybe C9 sometimes, maybe Optic sometimes, maybe Tempo Storm. When you have that, it varies all the time. You look at it, oh, we don't need to change. Every team is winning. But when you have an EU, G-Core's winning every tournament, other teams are like, how do we stop them? And that was my case when I made my new Liquid roster, was like, I'm sick and tired of FaZe winning everything. Like, legit, I was just tired. Like, every other team had like some really good players, but they were not on the same team. And that's where I saw like James is a fantastic player, EB was a fantastic player, but I just thought in their specific teams, they were not doing as good. They could have done better. So I got them all together, made a super team, and we gave them competition. I think a lot of other EU teams started doing that as well. They started making little slight roster changes here and there. Like Knights picked up a few players themselves. So they made them better. And I think that's what EU's one part of it. I think one of the reasons why EUZ was rising is because FaZe was so dominant. I remember Haxete was with Ataxia, and it was him and Mito, and they kicked two players. I think it was Profi and someone else. I can't remember.
Right.
They kicked them to get Gemty and Mexi because they were considered the best. Like, they made roster changes back then when they were really good. Like, this is really infant days. They made roster changes to be the best team, and they were. They made a fantastic roster, and they dominated. That's something they did, and that's something I see in NA that they haven't done. I see so many good players that you already mentioned. Keiron, Venerated, just one example. They are amazing young talent, like really, really good. And their teammates maybe were decent, but they were not at their level, and it struggled to see them perform. Like, you could see them individually, like, getting so huge numbers, but the rest of them were not. This is from my experience back then, is like the way the scrims were treated. And you see this vocally from NA, like McCoy posted it as well not so long ago. Like, if NA wants to improve, it's like they have to take it more serious. But I remember, like, from experience, this is many months ago already, like back around Oakland when we were scrimming, like EU scrims were really serious. Like maybe not so much anymore. Like it's kind of gone downhill from EU scrims, but way back then, like EU took scrims like really seriously. Like everyone was tryharding to win and everyone was improving that way. But when I played NA scrims, it was a joke. It wasn't because the teams were a joke. It was just like people was randomly stopping in the middle of open to shoot. It was like Publix. Like everyone was just having fun. It was a team deathmatch. Like, and we stopped scrimming. Like I stopped scrimming instantly after 2 games. Like this is a joke. Like I'm not gonna play this. Like no one was trying hard to win. Like everyone was just having fun. And that's what I think NA maybe it's shifting a bit more now. I heard like Porosaurus is running scrims or something. He's taking it more seriously.
When
I don't know.
When Poro gets involved, you know it's gonna be real serious. The dad professor getting involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good. That I don't know if it's still because
sometimes you're in trouble when the talent has to start running the scrims. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean,
I do think there could be a super team come out in North America. When you mentioned like venerating Keiron, I mean, they are the American snipers at the end of the day. They've got the name because they're a dominant duo, like with two like high end. I'm talking world class level players with them from North America. They could be a superpower over there.
And you saw it happen in the PGI NA.
That was the revelation. Yeah.
They'd shot all over so many people because they were just raw talent, not giving a fuck, and they just bad everybody.
You could see the strats because obviously it was Kate and Ven mixed together. They didn't have like strats, but when they were team fighting and they were destroying everyone. Like they were so good, like in my opinion. And it was kind of shame. I mean, I love Balak. He's a great player, and I think Tuttle as well. But it was I kind of wanted to see that roster because it was a full NA roster. I wanted to see how they would do it, but it was obviously made sense to keep Balak there in the team, you know, and they're good players and probably better for the team. But like that showcased how good Keiron and Ven were, and they didn't really get to do that at Envious, you know. With the old roster, but they're making changes now, and I mean, Venerators posted it. They're doing really well already, but like they're apparently dominating scrims. They're doing really well in GLL, and I'm glad to see that. And I think that's going to be a shift in the scene now.
We're gonna try and close to wrap this thing up. So, Richard, any final questions for you?
For me, no. It's a matter of just. I'm excited to see what you do next. Not been a fanboy or anything like, but like it's just. You know, we all knew back when we were doing, as part of my research, which I try and build a storyline for PUBG. That's something that I like to do on air and on cam. And it's like, you went away, you built this team to do one thing. Your first line event, you got second. Then you went through a dip where it was all a little bit shit. And then you didn't qualify. And then you did qualify. And all this stuff. Like, I kind of want to see that again of you're off Liquid, thrown to the Wolves, rebuild. I mean, GLL week 1, all right, last week 1, great, but still, again, it's early days. I just wish you the best of luck, mate. Honestly, do. I think you're obviously a world-class player. Start fucking streaming more, though.
Yeah,
I will be streaming. The thing is, I actually streamed, like, I was going to stream last week, but my GPU, I'm getting a new PC.
Right,
once my new PC... once my new PC comes, I want to stream more, for sure.
As one of the, I think, total 4 players with a personality in the PUBG Pro scene, I think it's really important that we see more of Scoom, and I think that we will in the future. So, closing thoughts from me specifically, I think that, we would like to definitely see this roster Royale thing. I think PGL, we're in this kind of dark time. No one really knows what's happening with the Pro League. We're waiting for that to come out. I think PGL is going to be one of the last good events, aside from maybe the GLL finals, depending on what happens with the Pro League announcement. So looking at the invite total factor, who is your favorite to win the next big tournament at PGL?
Probably Liquid, I would have to say.
What
I think
a goddamn homer. Seriously. Can we
I mean, even as a core 3, like adding anyone on that team they can win it, like seriously, without a doubt. Especially with all these roster changes happening.
Yep.
You know, there's still those core 3. A lot of teams are having like 2-2 roster changes. That drastically changes. Adding 1 is still pretty big, but I mean, they have Mister that's subbing, so like he's known our strats. He's been with us for such a long time that it's not a huge change in terms of strategy, and they're going to bring that in.
All right.
But another one that I think is going to do the best is Knights. I think Knights is probably going to be the best at PGL.
Or they'll come 15th, because that's what happens. Either they win or they bomb.
Yeah, they lack sometimes consistency, but what I mean is they have this is a tournament for them to take. Like this is
They're
a one
event win out there. They really are. the June.
I mean,
event
they almost had it at the GLL finals, but I think this is if there has to be one, this one, because FaZe is having roster changes, Liquid is having roster changes. Those are the two top teams, right? So they're gonna be weaker. Whilst Knights, they're the same roster. So
unless NIP have a honeymoon phase where they just go balls to the wall.
And
NIP is another one. Yeah.
NIP is something I wish we could have talked a little bit more, but I guess we'll have to save it for the next one. But Scoom, it's been terrific. Richard, thank you so much. This has been the inaugural podcast. I hope you guys found some enjoyment. Don't forget to follow Scoom on Twitter at Liquid Scoom, which is only awkward to say for the time being. And
it's not gonna be anytime soon. It's gonna change probably.
Okay. The Sims on Twitter. We're gonna try and do this more. And thank you guys for taking the time, and thank you guys for taking the time to watch. And you can follow the podcast updates on my Twitter as well at wtfmoses. And until next time, guys, it's been real.